Hello, everybody. We're continuing our 2025 Montgomery County Football Media Day. We're now joined by Clarksville head coach Isaac Shelby and Dawson Smith. Guys, first of all, I just want to say thank you guys for doing this. Just trying to promote football in the county, kind of turn people on and things like that. But Coach Shelby, I just kind of want to jump right into it. You guys are coming off back-to-back undefeated seasons. You're dropping back. Not dropping back, but kind of moving into a new region, Class 6A. Just when you're coming off back-to-back undefeated seasons like that and losing the first round of the playoffs, just does the approach change, from season to season when you have regular seasons like that? You're also playing the last couple of years the best 6A region in the state.
Yeah.
But does the approach kind of change?
I don't think the approach changes because I think we've been in both of those games. We were down to the final drive with Collierville 2 years ago. And then last year, it was a really, really tight game. We had the ball with, I think, 6 minutes left driving with a chance to win it. And then we fumbled it. That turned into a score and kind of the wheels came off a little bit there. But, that Memphis 6A region, it's the best region in the state in all classes, depth wise. So I don't think that changes. I just think we have to figure that game out, but it's a really, really tough region. It's kind of like, it's so deep and so talented and the schools are so big. It's kind of like, I know it's a first round game, but it's kind of like starting in the third round, like I've played, just in the past, I've played third round games and fourth round games that weren't as tough as, the first round when you get a Memphis team. So I don't think the approach changes. I think we just have to continue to work. And we've had chances in those games, and just to play here or there, I think makes a big difference in that.
When you have, the success like you guys have had the last couple of years, just kind of how do you go about avoiding complacency?
That's a tough one, because I think, Dawson, we were talking about it the other day, after practice, and we were talking about adversity. And I mentioned, especially with this senior group, when is the last time you guys lost the football game and then had to come in Monday, and watch the film and get better and practice? And, Dawson said it was your freshman year, because the two games we lost, ended it. So, our schedule's a lot tougher than it was. And, I think, battling through adversity, we have to lean on a guy like Dawson, the three-sport guy who's been through it in basketball and baseball, pitching the state championship game and all that stuff. I think those are the guys when adversity hits that we really lean on. And this group just hasn't had a lot of adversity, and if that happens this year and when it happens this year, we'll have to respond well, I think.
Dawson, even though you guys haven't faced a whole lot of adversity, like Coach Shelby said, the last couple of years, when you get into the playoffs and you have the last two playoff games like you guys have had, where you've been in it for most of the game and maybe led it, do those type of games eat at you more than maybe a game that was maybe like a 30-point blowout?
Yeah, for us, as players, like those type of games, especially when we go, 10-0 in the season and play tight all the way to the buzzer, and playing those Memphis teams is, different than the teams we play during the season. So those definitely eat at us. And then, when we come back the next season, we're like, well, we're going to get better because we want to focus more on winning that first playoff game against that Memphis team rather than being so worried about, the season. We are worried about the season, but, that's what really gets at us rather than, 30 bomb blowouts that we get beat by.
When, kind of going back to the avoiding complacency thing, when, you get to a certain point and that you're basically guaranteed to make the playoffs, just how do you kind of keep your focus on the game in front of you and not, worry about that playoff game till it gets here?
Yeah, so, I think it just depends on, your mindset, in the moment. You may know, you're making it to the playoffs, but you got to, as a leader and as somebody who's one of the oldest on the team, you got to focus on, okay, let's make sure the team's really focused and has their mindset on, all right, we got to win this game this week. We were going in the playoffs, but every game counts and every game matters. And we can make a statement through every game and each moment, all the quarters, we can prove that no matter that we are making it to the playoffs, we're going to prove that we earned it and that we're meant to be here.
everybody, probably the first thing they think about when they think about Clarksville football is, the offense, running it through your face, smash mouth football, things like that. But, the defense is right up there with the offense in terms of success. But, you graduated over half the defense last year. Jack Stein, Amari Galbraith, those guys are gone. Just how have you gone about, replacing some of those key guys on defense?
I think it starts with like staff retention. Taylor Stanley, he's one of the best defensive coordinators in Tennessee, in my opinion. He gets the kids prepared. We don't have a lot of turnover over there. We've got really, really good assistants. I think that teach the fundamentals really good. And we've got some guys that I think, Jack obviously and James and Amari, those guys were tackling machines. But I think that, coming behind them, we've got some guys that we really, really like that maybe in, other programs would have been starters a year or two ago that have, kind of waited and bide their time a little bit. But I think, I was really impressed last night at Creekwood. I thought we ran around. We flew around. We're hitting folks. I think that's really good. But I think our defensive staff does a good job preparing them. And I think they do a really good job of making sure that, we always want to try to make people play left-handed, So we want to try to take away the couple things that you do very, very best. And then we want to let our fundamentals take over after that. And, tackle folks and get people on the ground, cover folks, get after the quarterback. But I think those guys do a really, really good job defensively for us.
You got 17 seniors on your team this year. When you have a big senior class like that, you have guys that might not have had the varsity playing time, but they've been in the system for a couple of years. When you can have guys like that you can basically just kind of play plug and play, how does that kind of help you?
I think it helps. I mean, we've been building it a long time. We do have a bunch of seniors, but we also got 57 freshmen this year, which I've never had before. So there's a bunch of those guys running around. But those guys, I think they've got some reps in some games over the past couple of years that we're winning, by wide margins. So while they may not have, somebody like somebody comes to mind to me like Caden Farrow, while he may not have like starting experience, I think he's a guy that is going to jump on the scene this year, and a lot of people are going to be excited about. But he does have experience. He has played, and he would, he just kind of waited his time through it. But those guys have played. They're just not household names yet. And I think he's one that jumps off the top of my head as somebody that, this year will make a big impact.
Caden Pleasure, he's been your quarterback for a couple of years. Probably hasn't had many opportunities to throw it just because you guys have been so successful in the run game. But, when we were talking a couple of weeks ago, you said you guys were, going to plan on throwing it a little bit more this year. But, even when he doesn't have the opportunities to throw it the past couple of years, just kind of how has Caden evolved his game to where he can still go out there and throw you a couple touchdown passes if he needs to?
I think he's a good overall athlete. I threw 2 last night. He's a good athlete. He's tough. He's hard to bring down. He's really smart. He's a competitor. He wants to compete. He wants to win. So we're really, really excited about him. The bones of things, kind of stay the same, but in high school, it's not like college where you like pick the guys you want. So, and I think that's one of the reasons that high school coaches are good is, you're just, you're dealt a deck of cards and you've got to figure out how you want to play like that deck of cards, and it's never the same. So some years, some things that we normally do a little bit less of, a little bit more of, you know what I mean? But the bones of it are the same because you can't, in high school, you can't re-evolve or you can't totally redo everything every year. So we have a base set of things that we do. And then when, based on people's skill sets, sometimes a little part of it goes up, sometimes a little part of it goes down. But he's a really good athlete and I think he's going to be a good player for us.
Kind of want to get into the schedule a little bit. You open with Blackman at home, then you're at Springfield, at Rossview, at Overton, McGavick at home, at West Creek, at Siegel, Shelbyville, Antioch, Cane Ridge, all at home to round out the regular season. Dawson, those first 3 games, Blackman at home, at Springfield, at Rossview, that's probably, one of the toughest 3-game stretches to start the season that you're going to find around. just, what's preparation look like, especially for not only the first, game, but almost the first month of the regular season?
Yeah, I think for us, our preparation is more of consistency and keeping the discipline up and knowing that this season schedule is going to be much more difficult and much harder. So we've got to practice harder than we ever had and focus up and, watch the film and trust our coaches and be able to be coachable in that sense and be able to trust that the defense and the offense they throw out there during those games is going to work out and going to help us succeed in those games.
You guys are moving, into a new region this year.
Mm-hmm.
You kept Rossview and West Creek. You're adding Antioch, Cane Ridge, Overton, McGavock. Just, they're not powerhouses per se, but they're still pretty solid football teams. Just kind of, what are your thoughts on that new region?
Some of them we've crossed up. I mean, we've played Cane Ridge like in the relatively recent in the playoffs. We played Overton relatively in the recent in the playoffs. So some of them we have some familiarity with. Others we don't. We had McGavock on the schedule at one point. It's going to be new. It's going to be interesting. It's really, really hard until you see him on tape. You obviously get some tape from last year and kind of look at it just to, kind of see what it was last year. But last year and this year are always different. So, we got to kind of see those teams on tape and kind of feel it out. But I think it'll be fun. I think it'll be a new, kind of new life, new blood in it, to give the kids something else to look forward to, I think.
When you've had consecutive regular seasons like you've had, going back to that 3-game stretch to start the season, Blackman, Springfield, Rossview, Blackman upset undefeated Green Hill first round of the playoffs last year. Springfield made a run to the semifinals last year. And Rossview, big senior class this year, coming off one of their best seasons in school history.
Yeah.
Even though you've had the back-to-back regular seasons like you guys have had, with the production you lost, just kind of what's the expectation for those first couple weeks?
It's the same as always. It's, to go out and play Clarksville high football, to get after it, to run, to hit, to execute, to not make mistakes. And then at the end of the thing, the score is going to be the score, We worry a lot more about like the process of it and we watch more practice tape than we do game tape, It's really more focused on us, to be honest. But I mean, Blackman's an incredible program. Kreisky does a really, really good job. Springfield is Springfield. Dustin does a really, really good job. It's a program with state championship DNA in it. They've got incredible athletes, really, really good coaches, great fan base. Springfield is one of the top, jobs in Tennessee, I think. And then, obviously Rossview, just outside, Coach Stratty, like he's going to do a really, really good job with those guys. He's sharp. But what more could you ask for? Open 3 games like that, should be really fun. Big challenge. I think the kids are more excited about the beginning of the season this year than in the past.
Dawson, you guys have got to go on the road, 5 times the first 7 weeks. When, you got to go into uncharted territory that many times, in a new season, just kind of what's the approach to, going into somewhere unfamiliar, playing teams that you might not have seen a whole lot?
Yeah, and I think, for us, the approach is like, just because, it's not at home, we're not going to have all the fans, we kind of expect for us, but like, we kind of go into it as, no matter what, we're going to do what we can and fight to the death and do our best no matter what the situation is. Like last year we had to go out to Dixon and it was pouring down rain and didn't have really much people out there. So I think it's kind of the same mindset of no matter where we play, we're going to do what we can to get the game done and, do what we got to do to shut them out. But
you lost 1 game in the last 2 years, but I think everybody would always say that there's something you could have improved on. Just what were some things that you thought, after last season going into this one that you guys could have improved on or maybe needed to improve on?
I think we needed some more adversity. I think, we have to be in a spot where we've got to be able to lean on guys. I think over the course of the last 2 years, I think it was 2 years ago, there was like out of 10 regular season games, it was like 8 mercy rules, so the parts of the game where, it's a meaningful 3rd down conversion, or it's a, like a like a clock situation. Like we practice those things, but we never actually had to do them in games, So those like situational football is something that we really, really have to improve on this year. Because once the mercy rules on, there's really no situation, So that's something we've been harping on these guys about because we're going to need that this year. Not every third down's the same. Not every special teams play is the same. So, we've got to get those things in order. But I think, talking about going to other places, in situations and stuff like that, that's where you lean on guys that are 3-sport guys. You know what I mean? That's where you lean on Dawson and you lean on Bryson and you lean on those guys that have not only done it in football, but they've also done it for Coach Young in hoops. They've done it for Brian Hetland in baseball. Those guys are just used to showing up wherever, playing and getting going.
You scrimmaged Creekwood last night, who's always really good.
Yeah.
Go scrimmage Mount Juliet next week, who's always one of the best teams in the state in 6A. Then you go to scrimmage with Oakland, who's won 5 of the last 7 Class 6A championships. You don't have any teams on your schedule from the area that aren't in your region. Was the approach to the schedule this year, like you said, kind of building up to having more adversity going into the playoffs?
Yeah. We just needed to schedule some people that are really going to push us. There's, the travel part's definitely hard. But to get over that hump in week 11 and deeper into that, we've got to schedule some different folks that are really going to push us. There was too many times a couple years ago that, we had to, there was a couple times in the past couple of years where we get into the playoff game and you look at a kid in the third quarter and he's struggling. You know what I mean? The reason he's struggling is he just hasn't played as many whole games. Like 2 years ago, it was 8 mercy rules in 10 games. They weren't used to playing the full clock, and that's something that we just gotta we got to get going and get moving on. So we're excited about those teams and excited about the competition level.
Dawson, when you guys have 8 mercy rules in a season, like Coach Shelby said, are there things that you can still take away from those wins? Even if you do get to a point later in the season where, like Coach said, you're probably suck and win the third or fourth quarter?
Yeah, I think there's plenty of things that we can learn and, learn from that. All those teams, weren't horrible. It's just the fact that season for us was just going really well and we were doing good. So, there's always things we can learn as a team and learn, what can we do to learn from this and know that, once we make it to the playoffs, this isn't what we're going to be facing, and just, trying to face that fact. But I think there's always something that the team can learn together as what mistakes did we make during this game, even though we were up by so big, what can we do better to go up by more against certain teams like that?
You bring back a lot of production, or not a lot, but, some production on both sides from last year. But, guys like Caden Pledger, Dawson, bring back Jamarcus Watkins. Who are some guys that on both sides you're expecting to be some of your top guys this year?
Offensively, obviously, Caden Dawson. I think Morgan Padilla's played really good in preseason. Avari Galbraith, he's kind of the little brother to Amari. So Amari was kind of first on the scene, but Avari's a really good player. Bryson, DJ Bracey on the edge. Coley Reynolds is coming back. He's been rock solid for us on one side for a few years now. Kanan Orton, Carter Pledger, Josh Anderson. There's a lot of, I'm leaving people out, but there's a lot of depth in those skill spots where there's 3 or 4 guys deep. There may not be, I know James Darville's back-to-back 1,000-yard rushers. That's only happened one other time in school history. I don't know that there'll be a 1,000-yard rusher, but there might be a whole bunch of guys with 400, 500, 600, you know what I mean? Stuff like that. It might not be one guy with 85 catches. It might be, 6 guys with, a good amount of catches. It's a good quality, depth team. I think defensively, I think we got a lot of linebackers, and we've talked to Coach Stanley, some of our, second string linebackers. We got to find a way to get them on the field somehow. So, we talked, we're making some different packages and some different things to kind of get those guys on there. But we got a lot of good linebackers. We have a transfer defensive lineman that played really good last night from Memphis, Hollywood Johnson. I think he played really good last night too.
You played at Clarksville, were an assistant at Clarksville before you went over to Northeast. When you took the job at Clarksville, you started off, 4 straight losing seasons your first 4 years, but you haven't won less than 7 games every year since then. You made the playoffs every year for the last 7 or 8 years. Just what was the key in kind of flipping that switch to where you went from, kind of at the bottom of the region where they were at, and kind of leading them back to where Clarksville fans and alumni expect them to be?
That's a tough one because we started out, I think we were 5-5 the first year and then lost the playoff game. But just getting back, I don't think that group had been in the playoffs in a couple of years. So we had that. And then the other thing that we had was we started out really, really, really good one year. I think we were 6-0, 7-0. And then we had to forfeit a bunch of games because of a player that moved in from out of state, and it was kind of a weird situation. But I think that hurt that year, and then there was like a hangover after that the next year where it wasn't just the kids, it was the coaches. It was really, really difficult on that. But I think it took a while. I think that first batch of kids, was really, really good about buying into what we were doing, and then the second batch we got a little bit of like fight from, and then it just kind of turned once you got kind of Seth Phillips and Jason Eaton and like those guys. It kind of turned at that point, I think.
Dawson, not only the last couple of seasons, but when you look at the entire history of Clarksville High football, the school's been open over 100 years. When you look at kind of the storied history of that program, not only it kind of helps that you guys are coming off back-to-back seasons like you guys have had, but is there pressure to win when there's that much storied history in that program?
Yeah, I think there is. I think, we kind of take it as, our motivation because this program, CHS, has been around for a long time. So we take a lot of pride in, wanting to focus on we're going to win, not just for us, but for the program itself and like what we're known for and the history behind it. So we kind of take that pressure, know it's there, but also use it as our own like motivation. We're going to do this for everybody, for the whole town too, to prove that we're worthy of being here too as well.
Coach Shelby, obviously he's not out there running the reps with you guys, but, as a player, as one of the guys that's out there, just kind of what have you seen out of the progression you guys have made this offseason?
I think depth wise, one thing to piggyback on Dawson on the history of it, it's kind of neat when we have guys that come back from like, older players and they'll talk to the kids or whatever, but there's a group of guys that are, when you talk about like tradition stuff, like my dad's age that are really, really like, they want to know about Springfield, you know what I mean? And then there's another group, like the guys after it, that are like my age, like their big rivalries, like Northeast. And then the guys that are a little younger than me, they want to know about like Rossview, you know what I mean? So like there's different like age brackets of like, and that's kind of neat, especially when you get guys, like guys back that played in like the 60s and 70s, like all they want to talk about is Springfield, like Springfield, so that's kind of neat. But I think just our depth, I think we just worked a lot on depth. I think we've got a lot of quality players at different positions. And like I said, it may not be, with this group, it may not be, I don't think it'll be like one star guy. I think it's going to be a bunch of tough kids that are going to tackle you, that are going to block you, that have a lot of pride in our community, that'll get out on Hill to Jay Richardson and give it all they got.
Dawson, among you guys as players, just how do you guys among yourselves go about avoiding that complacency and just kind of bringing a different energy, different mindset at the start of a new season every year?
Yeah, I think we, as our team, I think we kind of focus on more of like the game itself and focus more like on each other and just playing the game and know that like we're here to enjoy the game, here to have fun, and here to do our best as well and play to our hardest, but know that like everything else outside of it, we can't control it, so it's not something we should worry about. We should just focus on what's to come in the future and just be excited for the season and know that, especially for us seniors, it's our last year, so we just want to come out and have fun and enjoy the game and know that like we did all we could and left it all on the field.
A little under 3 weeks until the start of the regular season. Just what would you say is you guys' biggest strength right now, and then maybe what are some things that you think you guys still need to tighten up for the start of the year?
I would say the strength, like I said, is depth. I think that I think the way we practice, I think we develop guys. Sometimes it takes a while, you know what I mean? But if you're a linebacker and you're over there with Dawson, Coach Freeman's teaching you, you know, by the time you get to Friday nights, like you're usually a pretty strong fundamental player. And I think we have a lot of guys like that. And it just takes a little bit of time, but I think our depth is really good. And then I think situational football, again, not to harp on that, but that's the area that we have to improve on. And a lot of it is just from lack of being in those like intense situations. So, but we're working on that in practice. You know, we've got, we work on it every day. The chains come out, you know, the Dawson's got to call the down and distance all the time. Like there's little periods built into that. So, I think we're on the right track on it. But you won't know until you get out there. You know, scrimmages are scrimmages and games are games. So you won't know until you get out there in those situations. If you fix that or not.
Are there any guys that, you know, obviously you've got your guys that were expected to step up for you this year, like you mentioned, Avari and Jamarcus and players like that, but are there some players or maybe a position group that is kind of a lot better than you expect it to be at this point?
I don't know. I think, I don't know. We have such high expectations. It's hard to say that, some guy, I can tell you some guys that I think are under the radar that by the end of the year, you're going to know. Caden Farrow, Nate Parada, Ethan Dalrypple's a really, really good player. James's younger brother. I think Carter Pledger, Colby Rotel. There's a lot of guys like that that have been developing, and they've, that they're really good players, especially like wings and stuff. Like when you get stuck behind some senior wings that are as productive as Jack and James, you're still out there practicing. You're just not seeing it on Fridays, and I think some of those guys are really going to show up on Friday night this year.
Dawson, going into your senior year, you've seen 3 different Clarksville High football teams. About to see your 4th. Every team is different, obviously, but what do you want the identity of this year's team to be?
I want the identity of this year's team to, be able to, as we said, like our weakness is the facing through the adversity. So I think for us, and what I'll take pride in is like knowing that we were able to face this adversity through this new schedule and be able to know that like we all fought to the end of the game, and every game is going to be fought all the way to the 4th quarter this year. So I just want to know that we can take identity and knowing that we're all going to fight hard all the way to the end of the game and all put everything we had, not give up and not show that mopiness, and actually, give it our all and prove that like we're worth the game and that we're worth to win, and that we're going to earn it.
With that new region, comes new playoff opponents. Now you're not going to the 6A Memphis region anymore, but you've still probably got a couple of the best teams in the state. That new playoff region, you got Ravenwood, Brentwood, all those guys. Just what do you think about that new playoff region?
Those are teams that we haven't seen, some of those Williamson County teams. So I think you go Ravenwood, Brentwood, and then you go to Memphis in the 2nd round. So, you got to be playing your best football by the time you get to week 11, and the other thing like we keep in mind in the off season is like, that's the game you're trying to win. So, or not that game, but those games at the end. So, you've got to be playing your best football there, but like you also can't be afraid to do something unique or different, to give you a shot against, the Ravenwoods and the Brentwoods. Cause like, in the Memphis teams, like I said, it's in 6A, when I think we're the 2nd smallest 6A school in the state, or 3rd or something like that. So, when you're going to play like Collierville, like we did 2 years ago, like I think we looked at our enrollment was like 1,502 and theirs was like 3,000. You know what I mean? Like they had like double the amount of kids. So we just have to find like what our niche is and do that really, really, really well. Like somebody told me one time, there's like 3, I guess that may have been bought by now, but like there's 3 kinds of soda, right? There's like Coke, Like they have their company, and then Pepsi, and then like Fanta has a company. You know what I mean? But the only reason Fanta is like still there, I think they've been bought by one of those two now, but not when I heard this. But like Fanta, like if you want grape soda or something, like you got to go to that because the other two companies, like they don't do that. So like we have to find like what our like pineapple soda is, and be unique in what we do, to give ourselves a chance against some of those schools with like double the enrollment that we have, and stuff like that.
Had the first scrimmage of the year last night against Creekwood. Scrimmage with them the last couple of years. They've always got a really good team. Just compared to, where the expectations are usually at this time of year, just how do you think you guys did last night?
I think we did well. I like scrimmage in Creekwood because they bring it. They slant, they move, they stunt, they bring linebackers. They're just real active on defense. And that's why I like scrimmaging them. But I thought we played well. I thought our energy was really high. I thought we ran around and tackled folks. I was really impressed defensively with what we did. So, I thought it was a good scrimmage for us. We got Mount Juliet and Oakland coming up. So the guys are going to have to heal up a little bit and get ready for next week.
Dawson, the expectation's always the same at Clarksville. But losing as much production as you guys did last year, what does a successful season look like this year for you guys?
I think a successful season for us is, we want to win, and, that's the goal. But we just got to, take week by week, say we're to lose the first game of the season, we just got to move on. We just got to, see what we did and see what we want to be able to focus on the next week. So for us, I think a successful season is just being able to face the adversity and just being able to move on and then do our best, to win what we can and get what we can to hopefully, be able to make it to the playoffs and to strive more to focus on that first playoff game and be able to, actually win it this year and take on that Memphis team and take it to another level.
I want to thank Coach Shelby and Dawson Smith for joining me today. To continue our 2025 Montgomery County Football Media Day, you can check out the Wildcats this fall, and you can check out all of our high school football coverage at mainstreetclarksville.com.